Welcome to Making Your Miles Count Production, an educational program to all Canadian lease owner-operators with your host, Robert Scaper.
Welcome to another podcast of Making Your Miles Count, and today we got our Peter and Dan back again here. It's been actually a couple of months since we've been doing it. A long time. I actually was sick for 3 or 4 weeks. I had bronchitis, couldn't go anywhere, and I don't like antibiotics, so I tried to do without it. And then finally I said, give me antibiotics. And so they gave me a very weak antibiotic. Didn't help by the time I was done, so then they gave me a stronger one. Well, and that's why 4 weeks of being sick. And then just when I got back on trying to get you guys together again, it didn't work out. And then all of a sudden I had bronchitis again. Like I had an infection when I was very young, and I'm very susceptible to bronchitis. So anything happens that happens. So, but anyway, and that was another 2-3 weeks. Lots of things, and then we just about had a podcast, and then I lost my voice.
Yes.
So, sheepers. For goodness sakes. Yep. Now that was a couple of weeks ago. We tried it. Now so we got a lot to talk about here.
Life carried on.
Life keeps on going.
Don't stop.
Come on, guys. Like, world, slow down. We're trying to catch up.
It seems like it's speeding up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Something that's been in the news now for about 6 or 8 months, and that is the bankruptcy of Pride Truck Group. I don't claim at all to be an expert in the actual incident itself. Like, I know Pride Group, their total debt was something like $1.8 or $1.9 billion. That's both in Canada and the United States. Together, there was somewhere in the vicinity of 10,000 trucks that they had on lots and some traveling and stuff like this. They had something like 20 or 25. I'm guessing here now. So a number of actual trucking companies that the group actually was financing all of the trucks and the operations and stuff like this. So there was a whole bunch of small trucking companies, by small being anywhere from 10 to 50 trucks. And the entire employment of those small companies is somewhere in the vicinity of 500 employees in there. So when the market for used trucks just hit the ground, and the freight rates started going down. Actually, freight rates went down first, and then the value of trucks went down. That's what caused the insolvency of Pride Trucks. Now, coincidentally, when was it? My wife and I were driving truck. I think it was in 1992, somewhere in there. My wife and I were on a carrier, and we were based out of Toronto, and we had a plug-in at the yard there, and that's what we heat water for soup in a cup and stuff like this. You know, we lived on our truck for a while. And while we were there, where it was Dixie and 401 in that area, that's where Pride Truck first started.
They're still there.
They're still there, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I remember driving by there, and just on curiosity, I just went by there and I looked at it, and it was, I don't know, it wasn't a very big yard. It probably had 20, 30 trucks or something like that on it. I can't even remember that much. I talked to the original, either the salesman or the owner, and that's where they started back in 1992, 3, somewhere in that area. So they've been around for about 30 years. And so they started basically nothing, or very, very small, and they grew to the point where they have $1.89 billion, 52 locations across Canada and the United States, and unbelievable amount of tractors and trailers and financing. And they financed sometimes entire trucking companies.
Wow.
Just to keep them going. He says, hey, you got some energetic, young, entrepreneurial kind of a guy, and he's got a whole bunch of friends. They all are okay with driving or whatever. And here, we'll put you in a whole bunch of trucks, and you start gaining cash flow and stuff like that. So the Pride itself actually financed some of these really small entrepreneurial guys and into companies. Some were very, very successful. And when things go good and you just leverage and just keep leveraging and leveraging, you can get really big. And over a period of 25, 30 years, you can get massive. But then when it starts going down, they were grossly overexposed to the owner-operator industry. And one of the first casualties in the market are over-leveraged owner-operators. They're the first things that are roadkill. And because they were overexposed to the owner-operator industry, it just collapsed their cash flow. They couldn't make ends meet, and it went into receivership. And now the trustee that was appointed had the responsibility of all of the assets. And they say, okay, what do? We have a giant fire sale and an auction and start auctioning off 10,000 trucks across North America, or do we keep some here and all sorts of things? Well, for the first thing they did, they had to secure all the assets, so they locked all of the yards where trucks were on. And I know guys who had their truck there and it was locked in, and they had a dickens of a time trying to get their truck off of there. Just because the trustee had everything locked and he had the key for everything. It creates a whole bunch of problems, and sometimes you can work your way out of it and sometimes you can't. But a trustee had the authority to make judgment calls as to what to do with all of these assets. Eventually, what occurred after a number of months and a few negotiations, the trustee said it is better for those 12, 20, 25 small little carriers that were still in operation. It was better for them to remain intact than it is to seize all of the trucks and sell it at an auction. There's better possibilities of cash flow. I agree actually with that trustee. He had that responsibility. It is always better to have to get 70 cents on the dollar in an operation where everybody understands that they have to work like crazy to get out of the hole, as opposed to go out and have an auction and get 50 cents on the dollar. It's that makes sense. Now, there was one person, he's a member of OTA, Ontario Trucking Association, who went publicly when the trustee said that they're going to keep these this dozen or 2 dozen trucking companies in operation. He lambasted the trustee and said, "What are you doing? You should be selling the whole thing," and stuff like this. Now, it was a humongous conflict of interest for the simple reason that he wanted to take over all of the work that these guys were doing, or some of the work, or he wanted to get things at 50 cents on the dollar as opposed to having to pay 70 cents or whatever, something like that. It was a conflict of interest, but I would actually side with the trustee. Now, there is this is a sensitive issue for a lot of people because Pride Truck is primarily the founders are Indians. Okay, they're from India, and there is some prejudicial attitudes that have come out because of this. The reputation very much was that they undercut everybody, and the wages went and the rates went down because these dozen or 2 dozen trucking companies, they were undercutting everybody, and they were actually hauling for less than cost and stuff like this. When a CEO of a North American trucking company uses the phrase "they're running less than cost," okay, that's a tricky statement, because one carrier's less than cost is different than another carrier's less than cost.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
And that's not fair to say that. It's easy to say that, and people just say, "Oh my goodness, that's should never happen."
Yeah.
Realistically, I've worked a little bit with that industry out of Ontario. I've done seminars and stuff like this. One of the reasons why they are classified as less than cost is because everybody in the whole organization, their motivation is to work rather than just than to make a lot of money. If a person comes from India, and I'm not stating that I know the Indian culture better than anyone else, but I do recognize entrepreneurship when we see it. Like when you see it, some of these people are unbelievably hardworking people. They cut corners at every place that they can. I don't believe any of these carriers have very luxurious offices. I was in about three carriers' offices in Ontario, and my office here is nicer than whatever I went there. It was totally adequate for the work that they were doing. Nothing fancy at all.
Yeah. And
that is in the culture, because I think I've said this before. In India, they have their taxation is not at all like Canada. It is like you don't pay any tax at all until you get to a certain amount of income. And then once you get to that level, then you have an auditor come out, basically, something like an auditor, to find out how much money you're actually making. So the mindset to an Indian entrepreneur is, you know what? Look as poor as you possibly can so you don't attract attention from the government so that we have to pay. So they look like they're paupers, but they could be very, very wealthy.
Correct.
If North American people would be like that, we'd be way wealthier. I deeply admire that. I love those, fly under the radar, the sleeper. I grew up, you know what a sleeper is, right?
Yep.
A car that looks like it's a beater, and yet they can tear the doors off any Ferrari.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Fly under the radar and have everybody under, how do I say, their expectations of you are really low, and yet you can blow them off the door, because that is something that the North American culture, they should be embracing. Really, that is an entrepreneurial spirit that North Americans should be for sure embracing, but they're not. They think, man, you know what? As soon as I make a little bit of money, well, now I'm getting a brand new, dually 4x4, and I'm gonna get my big camper and a cottage at the lake,
and I deserve it.
Yeah, and I deserve it. And they
you may
leverage
have earned
everything.
it.
Yeah.
But do you really deserve it?
No. Depends on what you want to do, I guess, with your life.
Yeah.
But success is sometimes the true test of whether you're going to be long-term successful, because there's a lot of people, and especially in the trucking industry, do really well, and boy, they make assumptions like crazy, and then they crash. The story that every accountant that's dealing with owner-operators, all of his experience, somebody gets into the industry, and they buy a truck, and they start driving. 6 months later, they got a new half-ton truck, they got a bass boat, they got jet ski, they got a cabin at the woods, and they have leveraged themselves up the yin-yang with stuff. And all it's done is just taken the cash flow that they are not mature enough to handle and just throw it into debt and throw it and leverage it out there. That happens so often. There's lots of people, not lots of people, there's quite a few operators who come into my office, and say, yeah, I'm a new operator. I'm going to blah blah blah, and so okay, right. And I start explaining the stuff what we do. All right, okay. Well, I'll tell you, in 6 months, I'm going to have my second truck. Oh crap! And he said, and then they'll say, and by Christmas, I'm going to have 4. Oh crap! And I said, oh, okay. You know what? My standard answer is, you know what? Let's be really successful with this one first, and then let's see what happens later on.
Yeah.
You know, because you're making a whole bunch of assumptions and stuff like this. If I'm dare enough to say it, because some people are so glazed over, they don't hear it. They've got their 4x4 dually in their minds, you know, and stuff like that. But that whole aspect, you do not see that level of, I'm going to call it financial arrogance, or not arrogance so much as they don't really understand what's going on in the business. They only have a short-term picture of it, and they extrapolate it off into the future, and they think debt is good. And the Indian atmosphere is not that way. Like, they don't they don't think in terms of brass and marble and gold and stuff like this. They are very, very practical in their thinking. Do they sometimes undercut just to get work? Probably. Sometimes, yes. But that is something that they have to learn, the art of oh, you know what? I just can't make a living at this anymore. I have to raise my rates. I have to wait for that better paying freight. They have to learn that. Yeah. And everybody actually has to learn that.
I'm all okay with looking like that. But what we see up and down the road, bumpers half ripped off, side fairings all bent up. Yeah. It's bringing the whole maintenance thing down. Where it's costing everybody a lot of money and a lot of frustration, and it's very unsafe. And that is something that needs to be implemented. I think I've never been on the side of the law as much as I have been now, is like the maintenance. Yeah. There's nothing, everything is barbed wire together and snap tied together to keep it on there. Like that was never...
Yeah.
No, what I've
but they're learning though. They're learning they can't do that in Canada for very long.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a hard lesson to learn. Yeah. But there are some, and I've talked to quite a few. There are some that says, you know what, our industry, the Indian industry, that's still something that comes from India. That you just put a coat hanger in there and twist it on there or whatever, and you can't do that. And there are some that are extremely good, but they learn that, but some don't learn. Some are they're too eager to work and not eager to learn how to be successful, and that's very different. And you know what? We all do that. It doesn't matter what nationality it is, because all of the guys who say, in 6 months I'm going to have my second truck, and by Christmas I'll have 4. Not one of them, if I remember right, not one of them was an Indian. It was all North American, right? You know, the classic guys, whatever. And that's based that's an error on the other side. Yeah, you know, and it has to be brought together. When people say, okay, listen, what is a reasonable freight rate for this? Yeah, and so be it. You know, let it be like that. Too much of the history of Canada is pre-2000. Like some of the people who have been in the industry longer than 20 years, like management, they're still thinking regulation in their mind. Like we are in a free market industry. Like the industry is in the free market. We are not regulated by the government at all. You can go out and get your running rights tomorrow for less than $5,000, and you have your own trucking company. It never was that before 2000, before 1990s. You can't buy running rights at all. It was all regulated by the government. Yeah. And when they moved from high levels of regulation to the free market, it was a great move. Saved the Canadian consumers $1 billion annually or more. Because now there's much more competition and the freight rates come down because of it. But some of the people who've been around since regulation, they're not used to that competition. And they say, well, I want to go back to the regulation because it was much easier to make money back then. Mm-hmm. And that's and that's just as an erroneous mindset as it is a coat hanger to keep your AirPod operating. You know, in there, it's learning. We just got to learn what is right.
So what do you think would bring the freight rates back up?
The bankruptcy of Pride is helping, will help, because it will sober people to say, wait a minute, we got to bring capacity down. Every single anything in the free market, when things are really, really good, everybody jumps into it, and there's always overbuilding, overcapacity. Yeah. And when in 2022, when the freight rates were through the roof, everybody jumped in and got their running rights and new trucks, and the overcapacity just took off. Yeah. And everybody thought, okay, well, it's going to stay like this for 6 months. I can make it for 6 months. And then but it's been 2 years now. And it's probably going to be close to another year. Maybe not that. It might start loosening up a little bit now, because now that Trump is in office, they're going to open up Keystone. There's a lot of thing for the oil. There's opening up like crazy. Now at the same time, we have to consider tariffs and stuff like that. So it's not a total blank check or whatever. But we will be better off. In this situation. So freight rates should loosen up a little bit and come up, but it won't completely loosen up until, now I'm getting into politics in Canada, but until we get the liberal, shall I say, the liberal loonies out. There's actually good liberals, okay? There's conservatives and liberals, but I don't believe the liberals that are in power right now are actually liberals anymore. They're just more loonies. They are so bent on special interests that they don't take management of the whole country into consideration. Only their special interests. That's only that. All they do is when you get somebody who says, you know what, greenhouse gases and we're not going to have another drop of oil coming out of our ground. And if that's their thing, well, goodness sakes, that's almost our entire Canadian dollar is based on the oil that we sell. And if you start squeezing that out, our dollar starts dropping, our value starts dropping, the huge economy. If they would open it up and just say, listen, we're gonna do with oil and open it up, yeah, we might have to make an agreement with the United States or so, but our economies is going to start to increase again, and then we have some better freight rates again. But then what's going to happen is more and more people come in.
I talked to a guy yesterday. He sells Barquette barbecues.
Okay.
And he said on every barbecue that he sells, he has to pay $250 in carbon tax.
Holy cow.
$250
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
per.
Yeah.
He said, I can't carry on. No. They're raising it up again.
Yeah.
He said, I can't afford to sell these things.
Carbon tax, this is a good topic to have, because there are trucking companies pay carbon tax. Okay, everybody here pays carbon tax. What does that actually do? How do you actually keep your carbon tax low? Is there anything that you can do to keep your carbon tax low? No, it's managed identically to fuel tax.
Okay, before you go any further with that, if you don't run Canadian fuel, do you still pay carbon tax?
Yes.
You still do?
Yep. Absolutely. It's managed identical to fuel tax. So if all of your fuel is purchased in the States, then they do your mile per gallon. When you're driving through Canada, whatever province you're driving through, you pay carbon tax based on the Canadian kilometers or Canadian miles. Same as fuel tax.
So, but if you just run north and south,
it will be minimal. But you still
very minimal.
Any Canadian
every
miles
Canadian
you'll be paying.
mile has carbon tax on it.
So it's not on the fuel that you buy.
Nope. It's in the the remittance form on a quarterly basis, or whenever you fill out your carbon tax, that's where you pay for it. Now, if you buy a whole bunch of Canadian fuel, it offsets your bottom line price. If you, for instance, bought 0 Canadian fuel, and you did, let's say you did 1,000 miles in Canada, and let's say the formula for that would be, let's say you pay $100 in, if you never bought a single drop of Canadian fuel, your carbon tax is $100. Okay, and then you turn around, that's your carbon tax with that. Now, let's say you say, okay, instead of all of your fuel in the United States, let's buy a certain amount in Canada to offset that. So you buy it and you pay carbon tax on your receipt of, say, $70. Okay? Well, then you fill out the form. You owed 100, but you've already paid 70, so now you only pay 30.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's $100 either way. Doesn't make any difference. There's nothing that you can do to reduce that number. I shouldn't say nothing. If you get 15 miles to the gallon on your truck, okay, when you calculate your fuel tax, or both your fuel tax and your carbon tax, you're going to pay less because you're consuming less.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay? But if you get 2 miles to the gallon, then you're going to be consuming more because your tax is going to be higher. It's the same.
So taxes will actually clean up the air.
That's
Yeah,
how
it runs through
that's
all
how
that paper and collects the carbon.
In theory,
The geese take it south.
Yeah. There you go.
yeah. In theory, their numbers are they're penalizing those who have poor fuel economy, and making it easier for those who have better.
So it is
economy.
better to fuel up in Canada once in a while.
No, doesn't
Nope.
make any difference at all. Zero.
You just-
Because all you're doing is just moving a bill from $100 to $30, but you've already paid $70, so it's identical.
Okay.
you
It
see,
makes
the-
zero
the
difference.
key-
Same as the fuel tax. Like
Yeah, the key is still getting
state of
your
province.
best price for fuel, and you still have to pay the taxes. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
in choosing where to buy fuel. You look at the base price.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuel tax, different states.
Well, okay, you have to take it off of your pump price, and that's what your base price is.
Yeah.
And you decide. You take a look at all of the places you're about to go through, and where's the lowest base price. Take all of the fuel tax off of there, and it's the base price. Now, I don't think that the carbon tax that all trucking companies are paying right now, that's only temporary, in my opinion, because when the conservative governments come in, when the conservative government comes in, they have vowed to get rid of the carbon tax.
Yeah.
Okay? And all of the paperwork, all of the cost is going to disappear. It'll be the long gone registry. It's gone. And everything's wiped out, and you start right from scratch on there. And so if I have clients complaining about carbon tax and blah, 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 I said, just hold your breath until at the latest October, November, maybe December of next year, because if they get in October, it might take a month or two before they pass and eliminate the carbon tax. But by the end of 2025, it'll be gone. Probably before then. I'm putting a lot of faith in a politician, so
Yeah.
who knows?
Which is not a good idea.
Don't hold
not a
your
good
breath,
idea.
right?
He's only
Yeah.
Pierre is just a man.
Yeah.
And we will find out if he'll honor his word or not.
Well, they have to honor their word.
Well, no politician has to honor their word.
Well, it's true.
It would be wonderful if they would, but because then it would be a little bit easier to vote,
Yeah.
But
Well, I voted for Trump, so.
you did how many times?
Oh,
How many times?
in Florida, in Alabama, in Georgia, in
All
South
the way
Carolina,
home.
North Carolina, Tennessee.
All the way home, right?
Yeah, Tennessee, I voted twice.
And you didn't have to give your ID anywhere, eh?
No. I told him I'm from the other place.
That's funny.
I'll be
Of course we jest. Yeah.
Yeah.
But oh no, it was that was an amazing day.
We stayed up till 2 a.m.
Yeah.
When they called it at 1:20, they called it.
Oh, yeah.
We stayed up till Trump's speech.
Yeah.
And then we went to sleep after that. But I have to say this. We were watching it on Victory, on Kenneth Copeland's network, and about 11:30 in the evening, it looked like they're in Michigan. They saw cube vans again pulling into election booths, and they thought, "Here we go again." And so they had a couple of people that prayed, and I thought, okay, not bad prayers. And when the second guy prayed, another guy that wasn't asked, he all of a sudden began to pray, and he took authority over this. And it was not an hour later, they called it. And I thought, you know what? They would have they tried it again. But this time, I honestly believe that God was involved. If you believe in God or not, this time you can't even deny that God was not involved.
Joe Rogan and Elon Musk both said it feels like we're in some sort of a simulation.
Yeah.
That all we're doing is we're just being sucked in through this tube or whatever, and it's not really our choices that are going to be are doing anything.
No,
there is something well beyond what our efforts are that is going
absolutely.
And it's true. It's far too surreal to say this is just by chance or whatever. I mean, goodness sakes, what's the probability of him turning his head so that he didn't get killed?
Exactly.
Like that's just one of unbelievable amount of stuff. And to realize, I know we talked about this before. Mainstream media said, "Oh, it's close, it's really, really close," and then right at the end they said, "Oh no, Camilla is pulling ahead," and stuff like this, and then they talked to some of the people that were actually on the ground, like some of the canvassers and stuff like this, and the things that they were seeing on the ground were completely different than what was being projected.
Correct.
They said, "Oh, yeah, look, they're harvesting, and they're bringing in people and stuff like this." And there were people on the Trump side that were bringing in, say 10,000 people to vote, just hauling them in or whatever. And they looked around and they couldn't see any Democrat people doing the same thing. There was almost no activity from there. They were canvassing. There was one neighborhood. There was a whole section of a neighborhood they were canvassing, and like the Trump people were, and they had guys there. They had like 150 people for 3 weeks in a particular area. And they said, "Well, what did you see?" Because you obviously see other people canvassing too, like in the Democratic side. And they said, "We seen two guys, and they were there for 1 week. And they knocked on maybe 500 or 600 doors, and then they just disappeared."
Well, how many times do you want to get punched in the face before you're going to learn?
Maybe they lost heart, or there was an awful lot of people who were getting paid to do stuff that they had no heart in what they were doing.
Even students, the university students were bought off. That came out at the end.
There was one stat that was, for me as a finance guy, is like this phenomenally. It was Donald Trump raised $384 million, and he spent something in the line of $350 million for his campaign, 300, something like that. And at the end, he had 20 or 30 million, about something like $30 million left over, somewhere in there. And his payroll was $10.5 million, so it was like 2%. 2% of his whole budget was payroll for the campaign. If you take a look at what the Democrats, first of all, they raised over $1 billion, $1.006 billion. Wow. And they spent $548 million on payroll. 48%, something
Yeah,
like
close to 50%.
no, 58%. 58% of what they raised, they paid people for.
Yeah.
And so that was like 58% payroll versus 2% payroll. Unbelievably just threw money out.
Yep.
There's a lot of these things like Oprah was paid $1 million, Beyonce was paid however much.
Yeah,
and so they got endorsements from people and they paid them.
Yep.
That's not endorsement.
No.
No.
You know, like I look at that and I say, what an unbelievably inefficient operation.
Yeah. And even at the end, they said there was 20 million less votes this year than were last in 2020.
Yeah.
Where's the 20 million?
Yeah, I
They still.
I know where they came from. But in 2020, they temporarily changed the rules so because of COVID that they mailed out a whole bunch of ballots, and there was millions and millions and millions of ballots that went out. Well, the Democratic Party is extremely good at ballot harvesting. And basically, ballot harvesting is, okay, you go into a huge apartment complex with 500 people in there, and you go and you start at the top and you knock on every door. Have you got your thing? Yeah, okay. Well, fill out your thing and you put and you do your vote. And they harvested. Basically, they pulled in all of these people who voted. Now, you do not have to go in and change votes, okay? Like, oh, you voted for Trump, I'm going to change it to Kamala or whatever. Because in an urban setting, it is much higher probability that people are going to vote Democrat than Republican. So basically, and if you really know a particular area very well, it can be 2 to 1. You can be twice as many Democrats as it is Republican. So when ballot harvesting is, they don't just harvest just the Kamala ballots, at least from what I understand. What they were doing was legal, except the advantage they had was they could harvest a whole bunch of ballots in a very condensed area. Now, if the Republicans could also harvest, but they have to go into rural areas, and it takes 5 to 10 times more work and effort to get those. And the Republicans were just not. They were not organized to do that. So that's why there was huge. Like there was 80 million people who voted for Biden or whatever the number was or whatever, way more so than before. And that is just because of COVID. That was the only reason. If they would not have changed, they were opportunists. The Democrats were opportunists. Hey, so why don't we do mail-in ballots? Then we can harvest. And they did. It's a one-off. It more than likely it will never happen again.
No, it won't.
Yeah. Not to that extreme. No. So then when this happened this time, there was not nearly the ballot harvesting that there was before. Yeah. Well, there was. They did somewhat, but they couldn't get nearly the volume that they did during the 2020. Yeah. So it's just not going to happen again, unless COVID 25. I don't know.
Well, the closer you got to the election, you just saw the Democrats just falling apart.
Yeah,
they're generally unified, but they were just falling apart at each other.
Yeah,
but whatever, we are very grateful how they come.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a skeptical mind. I'm going, you know what? For so many years,
once you get over 55, that's all we are.
Yeah,
we're all skeptics.
I thought we were getting wiser.
maybe being skeptical,
wiser, skeptical, same thing, isn't it? Yeah. Anyways, I was looking at it and I'm going, you know what? Something doesn't smell right, because for so many years, the Democrats just had the numbers down and they just nailed it every year. Like, what the heck? And the Republicans, they just fell off the tree, or like it didn't make any sense. And then all of a sudden they do this stupid thing as endorsing Kamala. Like Who decided that? Well, just
Yeah.
the guys in the office. They just changed, and then pushing like there was so much like you said, disorganization. Like there's something just not right, and then they just lose it, and it like okay, something in my head. I'm going, why did they want to lose this one so bad?
They didn't.
Well, I'm not sure because it looks like they threw themselves under the bus under
Well, they
every
did, but
occasion.
From the latest thing that I've heard is that they wanted to have a primary. That's one of the reasons that Biden had an early debate, and they wanted to get a primary, wanted to get at least some sort of a primary through.
Yeah.
But as soon as Biden was pressured, it's from what it sounds like by Kamala and Pelosi and Schumer or whatever to get out.
Yeah.
And
Obama.
Obama, yeah.
Yeah,
As soon as he said, okay, well, I have no choice. They are not going to support me. So okay, I will not run. But
Right.
then he turned around almost immediately and he endorsed Kamala, which basically sealed the fate that they had to go with Kamala. They had no choice.
Yep.
Yeah,
The other factor was too, there was some $200 million that was given to Biden Kamala already, and if it was somebody other than Kamala, they could not use that $200 million.
Correct.
So is a little bit of money and a whole lot of Biden behind it all. That's why they're saying that Biden was smiling, grinning from ear to ear when Trump came into the White House. It was basically one backstab after another backstab.
But if you watch the DNC, we watched both of them, the RNC and DNC. That they really crucified Biden.
Oh, really?
At the DNC, very, very much so, and they let him speak at, I think he spoke at 11:30 at night. Well, he's supposed to be long. He's supposed to be long sleeping, and they only let him speak for like 20 minutes, if that, and he knew that he was done.
Yeah.
Okay, they had already made that clear to him. He was done. So I think it just he's got a lot of bitterness.
Oh, sure.
Towards
I think he's
all
already
that.
happy now, though.
And he figured, you know what, I'll endorse Kamala.
Yeah.
And she's going to lose anyway. And I honestly believe that Biden voted for Trump. I honestly believe that. It sure looks like it, though.
It sure looks like
Yeah.
it sure looks like it. But
Well, if
I'm
you
waiting. I'm waiting for that book that comes out from somebody who's leaving the Democratic Party and is privy to everything that was going on.
Well, even Elon was a Democrat all his life.
Yeah. Well, so was Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
RFK and Tulsi Gabbard.
correct. And they saw what was going on.
Now they're the Avengers. They're all on the Republican side.
I like that. The Avengers.
Yeah, the Avengers is awesome.
Yeah.
But
It's good. It's going to be a good day.
That's
yeah,
It's a good day.
yeah. Like I think you were talking, or did we already? You already say this when we go into the United States, people are they got to skip to their
totally different
atmosphere and stuff like this.
It's very, very quiet, very peaceful,
Yeah,
very relaxing.
really. I'm waiting for that for Canada.
Yeah. My fuel mileage even went up because of that. The air is lighter. Like, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Actually, that is the truth. Not because of the election. Not because of the election.
Thanks for stopping by Making Your Miles Count. For further Making Your Miles Count productions, call us at 877-987-9787 or download us at makingyourmilescount.com.